Hey everyone, Ariel and Jared of aBlogtoWatch at Steven Silver speaking with Jared Silver, the president. We're talking about Bulgari watches, which is one of the brands that you carry here. Talk about why you carry the Bulgari brand.
So we started carrying Bulgari in 2019. And with the Octo Finissimo line, it really became requests initially from our customer base that asked us about it as questions. Have you heard about this? What do you think of this watch? And what was interesting about it was the history behind this line, the records that they have, and it became sort of a natural fit. We got an introduction to some folks over at Bulgari Watches, and really nice people, and we really hit it off, and it was a strong fit for us.
One of the most popular sub-collections within Bulgari, of course, is the Octo, which has been the most successful product for them for a number of years now and has a rich diversity, and you carry at the store here a lot of the Octos. Let's talk a little bit about the origin of the Octo and some of the special things that Bulgari has done with it that is particularly interesting to you.
Sure. So what I find quite interesting about this line is the history behind it. Bulgari acquired the rights in the company of Gerald Genta, who's the iconic designer of the Nautilus, the Royal Oak. So this was his last major design that he had before he passed away. And when he sold the company to Bulgari, they've expanded on that design into what you see now as the Octo Finissimo line and the Octo line in general. So it has that integrated case into a beautiful bracelet, but what they've done is they've taken it and they've made it ultra thin. They've had 7 world records at one point across most of the major complications that you and I are familiar with today. And so you have a piece of history, you have ultra thin watchmaking, and the finishing is on par with anything in this price category that you can point to.
Finissimo is a special subcategory within a subcategory, yes. And Bulgari places a lot of emphasis on its ultra-thin movements. You've described it as one of the other complications, and it's true that these watches require more time to engineer and to assemble. Talk about how you describe the importance and the value of the Finissimo and ultra-thin watches in general to the clients.
Well, what's interesting about these watches is they are produced in the Val d'Ajou, which is right down the street from Jaeger LeCouture, from Audemars Piguet, and as well as Patek Philippe. And so the finishing on the movements it takes about 4 times as long to manufacture one of these basic automatic ultra-thin world record holders with the micro rotor. It takes about 4 times as long to produce this than it does to produce one of the movements in a regular Octo line. So there's an exceptional amount of time that's invested, which is usually the highest cost of watchmaking, is the time of the watchmakers. And what I also would really admire from a technical perspective is the finishing that you have on the back of these movements. So for the price category to have an exhibition back and a sport piece that has such a beautifully finished bracelet such as this, it's hard to beat from a dollar-to-dollar value perspective.
Bulgari has played with a lot of different materials over the years, and just here on this tray we have a watch in black ceramic. You were holding a watch in sandblasted titanium, and of course we have polished steel. Talk about how this diversity in not only different materials but different aesthetics appeals to different people here in the area.
Yeah, being that we're in Silicon Valley, people like high-tech materials. So anything that ends with an whether it's zirconium, titanium, and even ceramic. And actually the ceramic piece is particularly interesting to me. What I really like about this piece is that they've fully 100% finished in ceramic, including the buckle. So even the deployant buckle perfectly folds in and creates this super thin, like the buckle just disappears into the bracelet, which is really amazing to see. And I have this is a limited edition that they did with the red dial. I have this exact same watch with a black dial in my personal collection. And some of my customers, actually, I've had 3 customers now that have bought the ceramic Bulgari Octo Finissimo, whether it was the automatic or the skeleton version, because they have an allergy to different types of metals. And so it's a hypoallergenic watch as well, which I think is kind of neat.
Don't forget it is an with zirconium.
That's right, zirconium.
So it's all the
it ticks all the boxes in Silicon Valley.
In addition to being elegant, a lot of the Octo watches are quite practical. Here we have the chronograph with the GMT function, which isn't just a nice looking watch that you can wear with a suit, but it can be a very competent daily wear. Talk about some of the features in here that make this way more than just a dress watch.
Sure. So here's one with a blue dial, and here's one with the silver dial. This is actually the brand new one they just released, so it's our first piece. that just arrived. What's really interesting about this watch is it is not only the thinnest automatic chronograph ever made, but it's also a GMT. It has a quick set hour function, so if you push the pusher at 9 o'clock, it actually jumps the hour. So if you're on the West Coast and it's 8 o'clock and you land in New York City, instead of having to unscrew the crown and reset everything, you just go 1, 2, 3, and bam, you're right on time for New York. And then the next time when you fly back, you just push it 9 times and it jumps right back to West Coast time. So it's very easy to quick set the hour. It also has a 24-hour time indicator, and like I said, it is also have a running second hand and a chronograph. One of the other things that's interesting about the watch is it has 100 meters water resistance, so it's a proper sports watch. You can go swimming in it, you can jump off a boat, you don't have to worry about it. It also has this beautiful exhibition back. It has one of these exterior rotors, so you have an automatic movement, not a micro rotor, a proper rotor, but it does wind the watch, but without blocking the beautiful finishing, which is really nice. And then finally, it has the finishing of a steel model. So you have the brush finish as well as these high polish accents, so it really plays with light on the wrist, and it's just a stunning watch.
I happen to really love the peripheral automatic rotor. You mentioned how this is such a thin movement, and one of the ways they were to accomplish that is by putting the rotor on the side of the movement as opposed to on top of the back of it. And if you are someone that doesn't understand that, at the very least you can appreciate how the rotor doesn't block the view of the movement, which means that it has a lot of aesthetics. And I fully agree with you. Bulgari, out of pretty much all the major brands right now, has such a wonderful balance between aesthetics and mechanics.
Yeah.
They're really doing such a great job. I'm just as excited as you are.
It's also very efficient. So because you have a chronograph that draws a lot of power, sometimes micro rotors don't produce enough energy in the watch, so that exterior rotor really drives a lot of power into the watch.
As we talked about before, Bulgari has played around with the Octo design many times. When the company acquired the Octo, their in-house designer, Fabrizio Buenamassa, applied his own design talents to it. And one of the interesting variations on the Octo is the Octo Roma. Here's a new version that has another complication. Tell me about it.
Sure. So the Octo Roma line is a great line for someone that has a smaller wrist. So some people find that the Octo Finissimos are just a touch too large. I mean, this one is just over 40 millimeters. But this Octo Roma, especially this one with the world timer function, really sits well on a lot of people's wrists. So Louis Cotier actually developed the world timer function in watchmaking back in the 1930s. And so what I love about this is that you just set where you are in the world, and then the wheel of the 24-hour time will move. Therefore, at any glance, you can tell exactly where you are in the world at that time, or where the time is in the world at that time. And this is a fantastic piece to bring people into that sort of history of watchmaking. It looks very technical, and it really looks great on the wrist, especially with that Octo bracelet.
Now, one of the things that Bulgari is also known for is haute horlogerie and high watchmaking. And in addition to all these are of course very high-end pieces, but there's an even higher level. And one of the watches that you're wearing on your wrist right now is a platinum version of the Octo with an in-house made ultra-thin perpetual calendar movement.
That's right. So I'll show it to you. So this is the platinum version of the Octo Perpetual, which also happened to be the Grand Prix winner this year, or Watch of the Year from the GPHG. And it's the world's thinnest perpetual calendar movement, stealing the record. And it is a stunning piece. There's not a lot that they make. It comes out of their factory in the Val d'Ajou, as we discussed earlier. And the finishing is really quite impressive. And we've been lucky enough to receive a few pieces, all of which have been snapped up very quickly from customers. But it's a beautiful watch. It's very aesthetically pleasing. The blue on the dial is rich, but it's not ostentatious. And it's got a nice little heft with the platinum in this one edition, although they do make a titanium edition as well. What's fascinating is that it also has a retrograde date, which was one of Gerald Genta's favorite complications across any function, not just date, but also whether it was the month, date, as well as even Donald Duck hitting that golf ball in that one very famous Gerald Genta watch. So I think it's nice that they draw on their history, on the movement design, and then they're drawing in this beautiful aesthetic. The platinum has a special sort of shine to it. It has the same finishing similar to steel, but there's a richness to the platinum that you don't get with steel. And then they matched it with this beautiful blue dial, which has this sort of almost like deep cashmere sapphire-like color to it, which I think is really really amazing. And then it has this beautiful micro rotor on the back.
Bulgari does their blue very well, don't they?
Bulgari blue is good, yeah.
Talk about some of the experiences you've had introducing not just Bulgari, but the Octo collection to customers in this area. What do you tell them? What kind of questions do they ask about? How do they go from being interested in maybe a more mainstream, well-known watch to something like this, which is really an up-and-coming design favorite?
What's interesting is that a lot of customers are now seeing this as like they're the first one of their friends that are going to this Bulgari line. Historically, like really technical people, I don't think we're drawn to Bulgari watchmaking, but the Octo Finissimo line and what they're producing, whether it be their tourbillons and mid repeaters to these ultra thin movements, is really captivating the minds and hearts of a lot of collectors, including myself. So there's nothing in my store that I don't personally like. And so when I see this lineup of watches here, there's something that excites me about every single individual piece. And that's what's exciting about Bulgari. So a lot of folks come in here and they want something new. They're tired of getting the same old, integrated steel bracelet watch. And so they're also drawn to the design, 2, the fact that they're using interesting materials, and 3, that the mechanics are so thin and they're accomplishing all these goals.
You've had a lot of success with Bulgari here in the Silicon Valley. Talk a little bit about Steven Silver's plans to continue growing with Bulgari over the next several years.
So we've developed a very strong reputation for having technical watches here. And this Octo Finissimo line is right at the tip of the spear as far as, I almost call it like a gateway drug to some of these other brands. They're accessible, they're captivating, and we've really tapped into a new side of Silicon Valley. And it tends to be a watch where people have their Rolex and they have their experience with Patek and AP, and now they're looking for something else, and this is usually one of those first watches that brings people in, and we've had a lot of success with it.
Wonderful. Jared, thank you so much.
Thank you for coming.
This has been a conversation with Steven Silver about Bulgari watches. Come check out their excellent selection of Bulgari watches. They will always have the best assortment, especially of the hard-to-find high-end models. Come to their store, check out their website. Thank you so much.